Mhm. Hi, my name's Jill Edwards, and I'm doing my case study on Chapter 10. In this case study, I'm responding to the teacher who says that many kids in the classroom are obese because their parents are lazy, that children do not really have depression or anxiety, and that autism is not real. It's just bad parenting showing up through their behavior. Well, my first reaction to this is the teacher might be frustrated, but the comments are not appropriate and they are not supported by research on child development. The teacher is allowed to notice that children come into the classroom with different physical, emotional, and developmental needs. That part's true. But children in middle school or middle childhood can struggle with obesity, anxiety, depression, autism, ADHD, and other developmental issues. And mental health concerns. The teacher's explanation of those issues is where the problem lies. So, first of all, I would talk about obesity. Um, In the lecture notes, obesity is defined as a child who is at least 20% over the average weight for their age, height, and sex. The lecture notes also explain that the causes of obesity include both biological and environmental factors. That means that it's not fair or accurate to say obesity only happens because parents are lazy or do not care. The professor specifically mentions that heredity can play a role because obesity is higher in identical twins than fraternal twins of obese parents, suggesting a genetic component. And I'm just going to show you the notes here, right here, doot, 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 right here. You can see another issue that becomes magnified during middle childhood is obesity. So here's the definition and the causes, which are more than just food. The chapter in the textbook also supports this idea. The textbook explains that childhood obesity, let me open that one, that childhood obesity, let me go up here. It is on page 270. So, being overweight and obesity in children, excess weight and obesity in children is associated with a variety of medical concerns, but there's so much more to it, and I had this issue with one of my children when he was 10 during COVID. He was 5 pounds too heavy. And the doctor said, oh, it doesn't work the way we used to think it works, where they grow out and then they grow up. But that's exactly what happened to us. So I don't know. I don't know about that. Um, so the textbook supports this idea. Chapter 10, the textbook explains childhood obesity is connected to many factors, including diet, activity level, processed foods, um, portion sizes, school lunches, physical education, that sort of thing. So that's what I'm talking about in the chapter in the textbook. So another important part of the discussion is the impact of shame. The professor's lecture notes say that consequences of obesity can decrease motor development, increase disease, increase learning problems and attention problems, increase teasing, decrease self-esteem, which all ties together. If a teacher already views obese children as a product of lazy parenting, then the teacher might treat those children with much less empathy, which is pretty much human behavior. Um, that could make the teasing, shame, and self esteem even worse. The teacher also says that children do not have depression or anxiety, um, which is a wild statement. This is incorrect. The textbook clearly says that children can experience mental health disorders, including anxiety, depression. It explains that anxiety in children may show up as fear or worry. Also, irritability, anger, trouble sleeping, fatigues, headaches, stomach aches, the gamut of different things. For depression, the textbook explains that children might not always look like depressed adults, and we are going to find that on page 284 in the textbook. 284. And if we go down here, Yeah, youth that have depression may show signs that are slightly typical to adult symptoms of depression, but they might feel more like sick, refuse to go to school, cling to a parent. I'm actually my kids are older, but my husband committed suicide a year ago, and one of my children is the one that found him, and both of them suffer from PTSD and from anxiety and depression. So I guess maybe I take that personally, and we're not supposed to for the lesson here, but I can absolutely say from personal experience that kids can absolutely be depressed. They can have PTSD. They can do all those things. So this teacher is slightly annoying. They're not just copying and pasting adult words. Children can also have internal experiences, even if they cannot explain them in adult language. So the teacher's statement about autism is also very concerning. The teacher says autism is not a real thing. It's just bad parenting. That is not supported by the textbook. Chapter 10 explains that autism spectrum disorder is a developmental disorder that affects communication and behavior. So the textbook does say people with this can have difficulty with communication and interaction, restricted interest, repetitive behaviors, and symptoms of affect functioning in school. So let's see. The textbook also discusses risk factors. Risk factors include having a sibling with the same thing, older parents with certain genetic conditions, very low birth weight, that kind of thing. So let me see if I can find that right here. It was on page 285. So, and it talks about the different changes and the signs and symptoms right here. All right. The textbook explains that children's bodies are not developing separately from their social and emotional and cognitive changes. And that matters, like, because the children's weight, behavior, mental health, and classroom performance are all interconnected. A richer way to discuss this would be to ask, what support does this child need? Does the child have access to healthy food? Are there safe places to stay? Is the child sleeping? Does the family have resources? And to help them do that, like, do they need an IEP or classroom accommodations? Those questions are much more useful than blaming parents. The professor's lecture notes also say that treatment for childhood obesity is most effective when it's family-based and focuses on changing attitudes, behaviors in both adults and children. The notes also say schools can help by ensuring physical activity and serving healthy meals. That is important because it gives teachers a role. Instead of judging families, schools and teachers can help create supportive environments. So what should have the teacher said? A better response would be something like, I have noticed some students are coming into the classroom with different physical, emotional, and developmental needs. Some children may struggle with weight, anxiety, depression, autism, or attention issues. These concerns can have many causes, including biological, family, school, and environmental factors. My job as a teacher is not to shame families or diagnose children, but to notice concerns, communicate respectively, respectfully, and help connect children with support when needed. That response would be much more professional and more consistent with child development research. In conclusion, the teacher is correct that children in middle school can have real issues that affect the classroom, but the teacher is incorrect about the causes of obesity, incorrect about children not having anxiety or depression, and incorrect about autism being bad parenting. The textbook and the professor's lecture notes both show that child development is more complex than that. Children need adults who respond with evidence, support, and compassion instead of blame. Again, my name is Jill Edwards. This is chapter 10 case study, and thank you very much.